welcome everybody from Community Club. It's very nice to meet you all. My name is Chris Russell from Rally. I'll do a brief introduction and explain a little bit about why we're organizing this. Also have my colleague here, Stephanie, with me as well. And so what we'll do is probably for the first 20 minutes or so, just have a conversation about crypto, the conversation around what's happening right now in the explosion of crypto, why and why we think that's happening, give you a little bit of insight into Rally as a company and what we do in the world of social tokens and NFTs. And then from there, really just open the floor for questions. I think the main goal of this whole meeting is to essentially explain to you guys kind of like why we see community managers as one of the most essential pieces of the crypto ecosystem, and how there's an opportunity for you guys to participate more, which is why we both ended up joining Community Club over the past couple of weeks. So let me share my screen. All right, everybody can see that.
Looks good.
All right, quick introductions. So my name's Chris, as I mentioned before. I live in Seattle. I'm originally from Philly. I've spent the past decade in tech working in SaaS businesses, mostly doing business development work at places like Microsoft and Zoom. I eventually ventured into the crypto world earlier this year as an NFT collector, essentially just kind of, introducing myself into that world and learning it bit by bit. Over time, I became so involved in some of the communities, I ended up becoming a community manager myself. I took some past part-time experience that I had as a brand consultant and brand strategy advisor to help an artist named Michael Johnson, who was launching his own Discord community for his collectors called Aku World. He was the first NFT artist to be optioned, to have his IP optioned as a movie. And basically what I did was help him build his community of collectors so that they were a lot more engaged. Long story short, that actually led me down the rabbit hole to Rally, where I'm at now as a partnerships strategist. Basically, I work on a partnerships team to help creators, organizations strategically figure out how to fit crypto into their communities using social tokens, which we'll get into a lot more later. But I also do that with the intention of helping them figure out how they're going to launch and eventually grow their token economy. Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hey, thanks, Chris. Nice to be here with you all. I'm Stephanie Pereira. I'm heading up creator success at Rally. I'm very lucky to work with Chris and a lot of other very passionate, community-minded, creator-minded people like him. My background is most recently, I was running a business incubator for people, for artists and designers at the new Museum of Contemporary Art in New York City. I did that for 3 years. And then prior to that, I was a very early hire at Kickstarter, where I was very fortunate to really get to build that community of people, most specifically the creator community. So by the time I left, I was heading up creator engagement, and we were at about like 100,000 people around the world. And part of that work, I oversaw all of our international launches on the ground and at the community level, and built all sorts of partnerships, Facebook groups, Slack communities, you name it. I tried it to figure out how to turn just a global group of 100,000 people into a peer-to-peer network of people who could help each other be successful. And so I've been at Rally since the end of May, and I'm really excited to sort of bring all that energy to this space.
Great. All right. Sorry, I lost the screen share for a second. So the question, actually, I've met some of you over the past couple of weeks. I reached out and got connected with Cole more recently. And one of the questions that kept coming up from a lot of people that I met in the Community Club community was, why is crypto exploding right now? So I figured there was probably a point to give a little bit of context to everything that's happening. So as some of you have probably already seen, I'm going to point to NFTs as kind of like the easy example. There is an explosion right now, just of money and finances that are going into crypto. And I think 2020 to 2021 has really seen that explosion of consumer-friendly products that have come into the fold, and apps that are essentially just making crypto easier for people to understand the potential of blockchain, as well the ability to participate. found this recently that I thought would be really helpful. If I can, okay. Um, Basically, crypto evolves in different cycles. It's only been around for the past 10 years or so, but there's kind of a form that can explain the chaos and order. They've, the cycles are pretty much driven by price, which draws attention, which draws investors and builders. And so I actually find myself in this fold of like I was drawn into this solely by the fact that there were, as an art aspect, a new product that was very consumer friendly, that was exciting. And then I started to participate and get involved in the community, eventually becoming a builder and participator myself by working full time at Rally, hence then the startups and projects. And so what we're doing is going through one of those phases right now. And so NFTs are what's happening in terms of the NFT art world is actually educating people on a concept of digital ownership, tokenizing your art, and basically taking digital content from Web 2, which also will explain too, into Web 3. But basically what's happening with NFTs is like the tip of the iceberg. Just some essential basics. I did a poll last week, or had Cole do a poll that actually asked how much you guys actually know about crypto, but I figured it might be good to touch on some light topics, at least just some basic education to explain some of this. In terms of blockchains are defined as a linked list of transactions that are stored on a network of computers. And so what's key about blockchains, and you'll see in these pictures here, is that they're decentralized. And decentralized basically just means that those transactions are stored on a network of computers and nodes. And so they all work together to verify what's happening across the entire system and across the entire ledger of the transactions. It's also immutable, which basically means that they can't be changed on the block. And it's open, meaning that it can be viewed by everyone. That last part is pretty important because what's happening in terms of the building side is that people are developing apps on top of these blockchains, which allows a lot more development and a lot more use cases for them. So there's a key difference between, as you saw on the last slide, Web 2 and Web 3. Web 2 is essentially what the internet is today, that's dominated by tech giants. It's essentially built off of a client server architecture where users are essentially the clients and companies control the servers. So these companies extract value from the creators as well as the users that are sitting in the middle. And then Web 3 is the internet that's been pioneered by crypto. It's built off of those peer-to-peer networks, which I showed you in this past slide here, that work and talk with each other without any middleman or even kind of having anything kind of interfere with that. And so it uses blockchain tech to kind of empower things. And so that's where we're at now, which is Web3 is the internet owned by builders and users. So essentially people can participate by having shared value using tokens. And so these tokens align participation for everyone that's involved in the network, whether they're investors, builders, owners, or just users on a day-to-day basis. And so this alone ownership essentially creates trust. And I think all of this is really important to think about in terms of just understanding everything that's happening in crypto and why it's driving so much of interest, because everything that was in Web 2 was pretty much kind of a free-for-all internet without any type of value. And there's, as you know, billions and billions of content that's put online that hasn't been claimed or owned or given that kind of dollar amount value to it. And where we're at now is everything is starting to be tokenized, which is why this explosion is happening right now. And even communities are being tokenized. So I'll pass it along to Stephanie to chime in and talk a little bit about crypto for communities, which is Rally.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. You want to go to the next slide? So I think, you know, the TLDR on Rally is that anyone can come to Rally to launch their own coin. It could be an individual, it could be a community of people, it could be a business, it could be an organization, it could be a collective. We've seen groups of people who are just excited about this moment and sort of impromptu, sort of like pitched an idea for a social token. Rally is a specific sort of corner of this wide world that Chris just described, in that we have built our own side chain where people create a social token that only sort of exists in the Rally world. And there's a lot of pros and cons for this, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But from a like what you need to know perspective, it's social tokens and NFTs are incredible tools for not just gaining access and creating sort of exclusivity or deeper like places for people to more deeply and more closely connect with each other, maybe places that where you can sort of go deeper on trust, people who are like more leaned into a conversation. You can create like gated off spaces. With tokens, you can also do things like, you know, very familiar things like membership or pre-sales. You can also gate content. So let's say you wanted to do like the thing that we're doing today is a private members only event, and then release the recording to everybody. So this way members would get to be in the Q&A, sort of really drive the conversation, but everyone else would get to benefit from the content. So tokens just enable this very simple gating mechanism, super familiar probably to any membership model that you've informed or been a part of. You can go to the next slide. You know, Chris said this line, like everything's being tokenized, even communities. And it's interesting because when I've said stuff like that in community forums or more creative forums, I've gotten pushback, like, why must everything be tokenized? Why must it be on the blockchain? Why does it have to be about money? And so something I've really tried to help people understand is that one is that a token, it is a representative device, and it is an essential key to unlocking Web3 as Chris defined it. So as this distributed network of participation and access, it does not necessarily have to represent money as we understand it. It represents social value. It represents someone's investment in a system. It represents, like, I'm, for example, part of a small Discord community where as like sort of like an onboarding experience, I was gifted 50 of the tokens. They don't represent money at all. I use those tokens basically to thank people for when they contribute things. If I ask a question and someone comes back with a really good answer, or someone does an amazing job facilitating a difficult conversation or helps me out of a hole, whatever, we can use those coins or tokens amongst each other. So I sort of like say that to you all to say that tokens can be used in this way that's should be super familiar to you as community experts, and that this is a way to really like build loyalty with people. Anyone who carries a token or an NFT representing access to a community, it's a way for them, it's like a badge of honor. It's a way to show that you have that. People do use this thing to transact. You could think of it as sort of like, again, you can think of it as money. You can think of it as a barter economy tool. You know, for example, in one of our Rally communities in the art coin, we have artists who are running workshops, and they're getting basically people are paying to access those workshops using that community's token, which is the art coin. And so you can think of it as a way to just, again, like transact with each other. As I said earlier, it's a way to provide exclusive content through gating. And then there's another very special thing, as I mentioned, Rally is sort of, we're our own little special corner of this whole crypto Web3 ecosystem. And one thing that we do that's really cool is we issue rewards. So anyone who is a token holder in our economy, each week, all the sort of most active economies are issued rewards, and those rewards are distributed equally depending on how many tokens you hold to the whole token holding economy. So it's a really kind of nice way to like go deep with a group of people. Next slide. There's lots of ways. I love this chart. I won't get too detailed because I want to make sure we all have time to talk to each other, but there's lots of ways that these tokens generate value for anyone who is holding the coin or who is at the center of the coin. So simply by holding the coin, so let's say I hold 100 of them, that is beneficial to the overall coin community. The more people that are in your community holding coin and holding it for a long time, the better it is for your overall economy. We also have introduced NFTs in different ways. We through campaigns to power transactions. People also use coins to, for example, we're building a Shopify app right now so that people can check out of your Shopify store using their creator coin. And then, of course, I don't know how much everyone here knows about NFTs, but NFTs are really cool in that as they're bought and sold, they generate royalties, and those royalties can go back to the original creators. They can also go back to the seller of whatever that NFT is. So there's lots of different ways that any sort of basically any residual value that's generated through transactions or through holding a coin, all of that goes back into the economy and thereby goes back into the sort of like hands of the community that is participating in the economy. Next slide. And then super important, as I mentioned earlier, we're on our own little special side chain, Rally. We're part of an overall Rally network project whose mission is to onboard the next 100 million people into crypto. And one of the ways that we're doing this is by taking you out of the sort of confusing cryptoverse and into much more familiar, what you would expect from a Web2 transactional space. So where you would go, you create an account, you verify your email, you take out your credit card and you use it to earn and spend your coin. So meant to feel very familiar and friendly. We kind of, in a way, exist in between Web 2 and Web 3 in that way. And that's by design. Next slide. And I spoke a little bit about NFTs. So the cool thing, you all are probably familiar with, Chris, I think had up the Beeple image earlier. So you are all familiar with those kind of examples, the high value one-of-one auction NFTs. Really beautiful stories, really exciting and fun stories around collectibles, of course, within the community as well. Whole communities forming around collectibles. One thing that Rally is very excited about is that because we exist on the sidechain, there are no gas fees or any fees at all associated with minting and transacting in NFTs. And then also the impact on the environment is nil. We actually recently published a Medium post on this. If you all want to check it out, we can share a link. But basically the headline is the cost of minting an NFT is the same as a single tweet. So that is definitely one of the upsides of minting NFTs on Rally. And one of the reasons this is super important to us is that we don't just imagine people making $1 million NFTs, but rather people issuing tens of thousands of NFTs that people can use in lots of different ways in their community. So they can use it as a ticket for an event. I love this example use case that Chris put on the slide. So it's imagining, let's say for every event that community club has this year, there's an NFT issued as part of it that provides you that gated access to the event. But then as you collect those NFTs, let's say there's 4 events, you collect all 4 NFTs, those things add up to unlock some additional value. So we're really excited about thinking of NFT in this sort of utility way, but also in this kind of like collectible, gamified way where people could even, let's say you only attended 3 of the events and you want to capture that 4th one, you could trade or buy or sell your way into getting all 4 and then unlocking that. So there's lots of fun ways you could think about NFTs and utility. Our VP of product actually wrote a really great blog post about this vision where it's sort of this intersection of art, collectibles, gated access, and tickets as sort of this utility like world. Next slide. So just to give you a very quick case study of what this could look like, we have on our website, we have a community of, it's the Raptors, the Toronto Raptors have a fan club called Raptors Republic, and they have a coin on our site called SRAPS. Within that coin holding community, there's like about 100 diehard users who have bought at least 10 RAPs to join a private Discord where they talk about all things RAPs, but they also talk, of course, about their first love, which is the Toronto Raptors. And then because they're a fan club, they've basically tokenized their fan club. So they have campaigns via their coin where you could join 3-on-3 tournaments. You can also enter to win their fantasy basketball league. You can get free entry to events. They're doing, I don't think they've done it yet, but it's one of my favorite examples is they've started to mint NFTs, for example, of like different players that they love. And they'll also start doing that where a % of all secondary royalties will go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And with Make-A-Wish, the idea is that Make-A-Wish sponsors the ability for people to hang out courtside with the Toronto Raptors. So it's a way for them to thank a foundation that's been critical in bringing fans to the court and getting to hang with the Raptors. I see a question. Rally.io is not tokenized. I don't know. We were having some site issue on mobile yesterday, but I think it should be fixed. So I would try again. Rally.io. Okay, yeah, try Heather. All right, so I'm going to hand it back over to Chris.
Cool. So not for the exciting part of like, what does all this mean for community managers? Which is really why I wanted to have the bulk of this discussion too, is community, as you can tell, especially from everything that Stephanie described when it relates to Rally, it's essential to crypto. None of these things, whether it's a speculative asset like an NFT or something that is buying Ethereum or buying Bitcoin, the value in that is from people coming together as a collective. And I think what's so fascinating right now is these communities and different tribes on the internet, as you guys are already aware, they've already existed for years now, but there just wasn't really that kind of numerical way of seeing and sharing that value. And really crypto allows people to have that shared upside. And so really the value and impact of community managers, in my opinion, will be super measurable in Web3 versus then Web2, because people can actually see the growth of the entire network. They can also see how it's so impactful for community to actually be the glue of everything that's happening within a particular community. And some of the things that I wanted to point out to you guys were just some of the opportunities that I've been seeing for community managers across the board. And we see it in really a lot of the projects that we're launching and the coins and token economies that we're launching at Rally. Just community designers. So people that can actually come and set up the flow of communication. We have a lot of creators that are coming into the space that are like, hey, where do I even go ahead and structure, like what platform do I choose to have people engage and talk with each other, and like really understanding the breadth of all those options and figuring out the right one for a community is a challenge for people. Moderators, that's kind of how I got my start into being a community manager in a crypto space, was becoming a moderator. Eventually led me to be going into strategy and community design. But we need people that are passionate about the communities that they're in to actually help curate and moderate that experience. Their strategy. So a lot of creators will need just consulting, creators and organizations in general, because people are typically known to, they understand the concept in Web2 of like Instagram followers and numbers there, and being able to kind of transact or use that as leverage to get ad sponsors. But it's a whole different mindset when they have to create a participating community. And a lot of people that are coming into the crypto space or launching projects in the crypto space don't fully understand that or know how to even create a community versus just followers. There are some aspects of this too that I think are new and emerging ones, which you'll see on the right side. And some of these are very crypto native, like tokenomics and governance. Or kind of traditionally what we've seen with crowdsourcing, but can be adapted with the crypto element of tokenomics. So tokenomics is pretty much how do you structure the economic incentive that surrounds a tokenized community. So a lot of times what you'll see is that groups that are launched, they'll have a token and how much the token is rewarded to people. How do they earn those tokens? What actually drives to participation? There's a huge amount of strategy around that. And if anyone wants, I can send you some resources for books and articles to read specifically on that. I personally have a bet that that's going to be one of the most in-demand jobs in the next few years, depending on how things go. But it's going to be something that a lot of people don't want to have the time to learn how to do or even want to study. We're still constantly learning it ourselves, and we're in it full time, 24/7. Another thing is crowdsourcing, which some of you may have some experience in doing, but crypto projects will really need an understanding of how to drive funds and also organizing ideas similar to like a think tank. And then the last thing was governance. This is also something that's really important. It's a lot of these token communities are starting to operate very similar to nation states. So they're just communities that of a lot of voting. They have their budgets, their own proposals. Some of you may be aware of the concept of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. And it's kind of like the main next step beyond what's happening right now of what may be like fan tokens and fan communities that are set around a particular individual. but going into things that involve a lot of different people and has a shared initiative. Some people are even considering this could be the next phase of like an LLC or a C Corp. So I think that's going to be another emerging kind of opportunity for community managers to learn a new skill and also to kind of establish themselves within this space. And then more specifically, Rally, there are tons of opportunities with us, and I'm working very closely with Cole to kind of figure out how we want to structure this, and definitely want everyone on this call, we want your feedback as well on how to do this, but we want to build a network of community experts to work with us. Essentially, these will be people that will come in, get assigned to a creator or organization that doesn't really know how to run a community, either to just advise them, set up a certain strategy, a roadmap, or even to come in here and actually just work maybe on a consulting, on a contract basis, and actually be a manager of that person's community. We're having conversations with a breadth of people, from large organizations, big brands, all the way to influencers. And a lot of these people need help and guidance. And that's when it kind of light bulb went off in my head a couple months ago. It's like, we need to have a community of community managers to actually be able to assign to this. And so we're going to wrap this up in a second for Q&A. I've kind of aggregated some really, really useful resources for you guys, and I'll send this deck afterwards, but essentially there's general crypto education, and there's the concept of social tokens, which will actually be a little bit more applicable to where I see community managers fitting into all of this. But I also have some newsletters too. So some of these guides will be helpful. The podcast will be good to kind of help you get your basis. But the newsletters I highly recommend as ongoing education, because quite frankly, this space changes hourly. By the time we get off this call, there's probably some new stuff that's happened in crypto that I'm going to have to catch up on myself. But it's just a nonstop space. So it helps to kind of follow some newsletters to stay in the loop. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I see we got a bunch of stuff in the chat. But people, I mean, this is a small group, so if anybody wants to kind of just unmic themselves and talk, we can do that too. Let's see.
I guess just to kick things off, what's the best way for community managers within the community club to start, doing work with Rally and getting in touch with your creators, whether it's on a full-time capacity, part-time, contract work, consulting, whatever it might be?
Yeah. I think to start, this was kind of the main info session to get people interested. I will just kind of field a lot of that for now. So if anybody, I'm in a community club, I'm in the Web3 channel. So if anybody has any interest, definitely please send me a message. I'll put my email in here too, and just reach out to me. I'm gauging kind of the interest on the partnership side of who we have launching communities and who needs help with particular projects. And so what I'll do is I'll just play matchmaker to kind of start things off, to get an idea of how much help people need. But I also need from, I guess, the community club, an idea of the different skills that you guys offer, what you guys, based off of this presentation, where you guys see yourself delivering impact the most. And obviously too, financially, what are your rates, what's your time, your bandwidth, and things like that. I think because a lot of this is still early on, I want to work closely with all of you guys to figure out how can this be structured, because it hasn't been done before in the world of crypto. Like there isn't all of this concept of community managers is just rustling in the early chapters of like Discord chats and channels where people are just saying, now realizing that this is actually important. So yeah, it's an answer to your question, but also kind of like pushing back on people to kind of help me develop that too, because we're still in development of what this looks like.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would love more questions because we're here to build together, to be honest, as Chris said. I will build on what Chris said. And also, I think we often find ourselves in conversations with creators. So as part of my role, we're building up a whole sort of like what we see as like ecosystem of talent and services and apps and resources that a creator can tap. So Very soon we'll be launching an apps and services directory where creators can connect with folks like you. So I would say we would like to be able to start experimenting and working with community people and figuring out what does the right mode of support look like what is like a one-touch strategic advising session versus maybe something that's like a little more comprehensive in terms of making a roadmap versus actually getting involved and being a community manager with somebody as they're building a community for the first time. We don't know what that journey looks like or the right different sort of like scaffolded stakes look like. We're working with lots of creators directly that we would like to be able to appropriately direct them. But then we would also in this sort of like ecosystem app services directory world be able to like have some like at their fingertips resources that are the right resources that they'll need as they're planning to launch their coin.
Cool. We got some other questions. Jocelyn asked, how does Rally and the tokens and NFTs created on there relate to Ethereum and OpenSea? Could you create a community token and somehow convert to Ethereum or BTC, or does it just live on Rally's sidechain? Great question. Stephanie may have a more recent update for you guys than I do. But essentially most of the stuff, think of Rally's sidechain when you create your coins and you launch NFTs on there as another feature that enhances your economy. As Stephanie described, the goal is to drive transactions and reasons to hold. And so it's kind of like your own world where when you launch those NFTs, there should be a reason for people to pay in a coin to give you money for those NFTs so that you can take those coins and kind of reinvest them in that world. So it lives within the sidechain. Now we're having conversations about ways to kind of have that bridge out to Rally or to the mainnet Ethereum. So I'll let Stephanie if she has any updates on that.
Yeah, it'll happen. I mean, we're all about interoperability. So whether it's across the Rally network or whether it's between the Rally sidechain and Ethereum mainnet or even other crypto protocols, what I will say, and it's our core business model lives on the sidechain, like this idea that you can transact for free very quickly without a lot of crypto knowledge. Without incurring gas fees in a space that like we've also very carefully sort of like built in terms of like regulation and safety. Like we will live, Rally sidechain will always be the core of where we are, but in the next, I would say by like 6 to 9 months from now, people will be able to in some shape or form be able to bridge out to mainnet. But like what that exactly looks like and what the core benefits are of it, TBD. The crypto space is fascinating. As Chris said, it changes so rapidly. So I've been seeing really interesting examples where some companies offer people the ability to bridge into mainnet. This is not our company, other companies. But like essentially they're making like a token or a placeholder that represents the actual token on the side chain. So it's basically having like a mirror version of your token. So that basically the idea is that you can unlock all the benefits, tools, and resources that are available for people who are using Ethereum tools, but it's not tied to like actual like Ethereum coin. So it's a marker essentially, which is cool. It's an interesting model.
That is interesting. I didn't even know about that.
I know. I should find the article. I was like in some Twitter rabbit hole this weekend, of course.
Yeah. Jocelyn had another question. Do community members pay USD to get your community tokens, or are those gifted to members for attending events, or either? So yes, both. It really just depends on how you want to creatively drive adoption in the beginning. I'm calling it kind of the distribution phase, when somebody first creates a coin and they have a couple of weeks or up to a month to kind of get it in the hands of people. We actually work to kind of strategically figure out like, hey, what's a good gift amount? Which basically you have some coins that, let's say it's $500 to $1,000 worth, which could be, 4,000 or 5,000 coins, depending on whatever price of it is, that you decide, hey, you want to actually gift those out. So I have, for example, an NCAA athlete named Jalen Clark, and he did an airdrop last week. So he used one of our developer platforms to airdrop, I think it was 5,000 coins to people. And basically what that means is he posted on his Twitter and his Instagram, hey, go claim some coins. They're gifted, they're free to everybody who's an active follower of mine. And 50 people claim, or 100 people claimed 50 coins each. So those are like 100 fans that he knows personally have coins to deploy. And when he wants to release an NFT, or if he wants to create some sort of special appearance or a reason for them, he can price that within those coins amounts and say, hey, you know, it requires you 25 coins to get this. Now that's going to be useful for those people that have coins that are already the community members. But then the people that don't have the coins, when he does some sort of promotion, are going to do exactly like you said. They're going to be, hey, I want to participate in this. Let me go use my credit card USD to purchase some coins. And now I can be an active participant. With that, I think it's also good to kind of visualize this. I heard one of our ambassadors actually use this, and I love this example. He was like, it's like going to Dave and Buster's and buying coins to participate in an arcade. You know, you're purchasing coins to be active in each community that you end up joining. You're very welcome. Any other questions? Or any thoughts of like what you guys see, you know, in terms of the opportunities for community managers? Because like a lot of that was just my assumptions, but you guys may have like been sitting on the edges of crypto, participating in it, and realized like, oh, maybe this is really like the future for where community managers can fit.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Diana. I run an NFT project with a team outside of my day job. So definitely heard of Rally before. Really cool what you guys are doing. And so I had a few questions of what I was curious about, and maybe you can answer some more. So one thing that's really big right now in the NFT space, I guess more of a side joke, but also genuine concern, are a lot of projects are created, and there's a term called rug pulling, you know, where the creators of the project abandon it, therefore leaving, you know, a lot of quote unquote, I don't even know the right term. I don't want to say investors, but NFT purchasers, holders, disappointed and figuring out, you know, what to do next. So I wanted to know how Rally approaches this, since I would imagine it's still similar where you're raising capital to a certain extent through the coin. How does it stay within the ecosystem of Rally? And then I'll move and I'll wait before the next question.
Yeah, so I mean, Rally, I'm curious what Chris will say, but I can say right now we're not open for anyone to launch a coin. And one of the reasons is because right now we have either a pretty rigorous application process, or we invite people in and work with people to launch. And we do that in part for safety reasons, to like ensure that any coin that we're launching is a healthy one, and that the community will be mostly like, there will be no rugging. We have the same term. There will be no rugging. I will say, it's, you know, creators, people who have the majority control of a coin, it really is up to them what they do with their coin, you know, who they send it to, if they cash out or not. The other thing that me and my team are actively trying to do is just work with our creators and sort of building sort of like a sense of real, like going back to that phrase Chris used earlier around tokenomics. So just have a real sense of like ownership and like sense of responsibility to their coin holding community. So one thing, for example, with a lot of our more established creators, what you will see them do is they'll take their Rally network rewards, and, you know, they can truly do whatever they want with those. They can cash them out and use them to pay themselves every week. What a lot of them do is they sit on them, they let them accrue. And in the case where, let's say someone does cash out and it negatively impacts coin price and does other bad things to the coin, they'll take their rewards to put them back into the coin to stabilize things for the rest of the holders. So we're generally seeing more of that kind of behavior because we do have such a carefully and closely stewarded community of creators that we're working with.
Yeah. And also to that point too, like we spend a lot of time sitting down and talking with any kind of creator organization that's trying to launch something to understand how they're going to use it. Because the one question they always ask is like, what's the risk for me to do this? And really the risk is that you create a bad experience for your community. So like the people that are opting into it now aren't necessarily looking to try to do something that's going to screw those followers over. Because I mean, frankly, it's their business, right? It's their followers and their business, and when they start to introduce it to them. So I think right now we're at a good place where it's like, it's the right people coming through to actually participate in this.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question I had was, are you, as maybe as a company, creating guidelines of what a CM in Web3 should be like? So one of the frustrations I've seen is I've done traditional community management for the past 7 years, and you know, bridging into this world, there's a lot of toxicity and sort of really juvenile mistakes, I think, that, you know, people are entering Web3 and trying to perceive what community is. And I don't think that's a bad thing because, you know, it's more people that want to get into community, but there's a lot of mistakes that don't need to be made, or a lot of tolerance, I think, for immaturity and how to put it, just like, I don't know, toxic Discord stuff. So like, are there any materials that you're creating to create like healthy guidelines of what a CM should be in Web3 as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I created like a Discord guide just for basics on like how to set up and how to think about structuring it. What you're getting at is actually a very specific cultural issue that I think actually is having a change with crypto right now. Like if you remember that slide that I was showing of like the price, which draws the attention, brings people in, and then causes people to kind of like build and create ideas. I personally am noticing that there's a difference in diversification of people that are coming in. You're getting more women involved, you're getting more minorities involved in crypto that are like finding meaningful projects. So I think the tables are going to like gradually change. It's the internet, so you're going to have a lot of like screwed up things there. We don't have any documentation that like specifically says like here's how you moderate that, but I think that actually is a good point because, you know, I would love to work with like somebody like you, Diane, who's actually building within this space and probably sees some of the kind of community mistakes that are there to kind of like set that up. You know, maybe it's one of the things that Stephanie could talk about this because she's running that initiative is having people come as guest bloggers on our site to talk about these things. Like, because I think it's something, I'm not as much in the weeds in some of these communities as much as possible. I'm in like 30 Discords right now, which to some people that may not even be a lot, but trying to participate in those is tough to even understand. Like there was a bunch of issues a couple of weeks ago with one, and like people were pissed off at each other. Like it is toxic for sure. But I think if people create meaningful projects and create and structure those environments correctly, which also is why I was like, man, we need to have professional community managers start to be in the space. Yeah, because it's just there aren't professional community managers. There are anonymous people on the internet that are moderating the Discords that are encouraging all types of stuff. So some places are toxic environments, but yeah.
Yeah, Diana, just like +1 to everything you said. This is partially why Chris and I are doing this. Yeah. We want to create a safer, healthy community space. We want to build on all the incredible internet community work that's been done over the past decade plus, and don't want to have to start over. And there's a lot to be done. So yes, we've taken an approach with our blog where we're crowdsourcing content that we think everyone should see rather than just having it as like a top-down blog. So we would love for you to contribute. And we did initially in our initial call with Cole also talked about maybe it's a series with Community Club because we agree there's a story to be told here. I actually saw a Twitter thread last night that was something like, I don't remember what it was, but it really triggered me. And I was like, I'm definitely not opening this like Twitter thread about how this person supposedly is like running a community from scratch. I could just tell from the way they wrote it that they weren't bringing a lot of like thoughtfulness and inclusivity to their approach. And I would like to make sure that that rally, we have an opportunity here. So we're excited to foster healthier professional conversations.
Definitely, just DM'd you, Chris, on Slack, and would love to continue the conversation offline.
Yeah, please do.
I think Solomon had a great question.
He did, you're right.
I think 42, yeah.
How do you plan to onboard community managers with little or no knowledge of crypto to get acquainted with the ecosystem? Well, first, hopefully the recording of this will be helpful for a lot of people. I'll send that deck afterwards too, so people can have that, which includes a ton of resources there. I think just to start this off, especially as we're like getting it in the beginning, is like people come to us, maybe we get an idea of what their crypto knowledge is. I'll ask you those questions of like where you are on the range of crypto curious to crypto enthusiast, just to get an idea of what to educate you on, and probably provide some of the resources before we introduce you to an opportunity with a creator. I will say though, I think there's benefit in not being super acquainted with crypto. It might actually be somewhat of a superpower because you're bringing knowledge from traditional businesses and traditional industries into the space. Like I think for me that's been important. Like when I started working with Micah for Aku, and he's setting up something, like I had crypto knowledge to understand all the crypto things he was doing, but he was way more crypto advanced than I was. And he was like kind of, introducing me to that world more. But then I had experience with like brand strategy, values, so how to set up the values of a community, like how to set up flows of conversations. And there was like stuff like that kind of merged perfectly with that. So I'll say I'd like to say, like, we'll make sure that you guys get more acquainted with it, but I think there's stronger knowledge in your community experience than anything else.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say that slide that Chris showed with all that like crypto specific opportunities for community managers, like I struggle with this a lot. Like I just caught up with a friend of mine who founded like a really well-known nonprofit, and I was like, how do I like translate what we do into what you do? And I just used all her words, and it was a really rich and powerful conversation. And I would say same here, like tokenomics. It's really what it really means is like, how are you making the most of your community engagement plan? Like that's like really what it means. Like tokens are a way to sort of like set that up and control that and control the flow of that. And it's really fun to game. But really, when I talk to creators about this stuff, I'm talking to them about community stuff. I'm not really applying any, yes, I do spend a lot of time reading crypto blogs and Twitter, but like, I'm not applying any specific like crypto knowledge when I'm having strategic conversations with the creators we work with.
Well, I'm in the Slack channel. Stephanie is too. So if you guys have any other questions for us, just tag us, let us know. Happy to help people there.